All right, all right, all right, all right. Thanks so much for everybody for joining the live stream. My name is Rene. I'm leading the CXL talent program. So if you guys haven't heard about CXL Live, then you can go check it out after the live stream. But shortly, we're helping to get affordable talent from abroad. We're CXL vetted marketers, and the process 100% risk-free. So if you're interested in building a global team, you should definitely check it out. There's also a link in the comments, and the link is down below the video. So thanks so much for coming to the live stream. And there's a special guest together with me in this live stream. He's a CEO of CXL, and his name is Merritt Aho. Thank you so much, Merritt, for coming to the live stream and sharing your insights, how to grow the remote workforce globally. Maybe you can share something cool about yourself or some cool things about your background.
Prior to joining CXL, I had never hired anyone internationally before. I'd worked with people internationally, but I'd never taken the step to actually make an international hire. So it was something I learned to embrace since joining CXL, and really, I'm a bit of a convert to the process.
So that's maybe something cool. Also, what you did last year. So basically, people can use something to slide into your DMs on LinkedIn after the live stream and say, "Hey, Merritt, I liked that you did this last year. Let's connect."
Something I did last year, and I'll put it in the context of like remote work, but we instituted across our company some common working hours, right? When one of the challenges that you meet with when you are in a global environment is finding the time to meet together. And so we tried out doing some common work hours that would give us a chance to meet together.
Yeah, definitely. I would say getting together a few times per year has been a really great experience, being part of CXL team as well. So yeah, let's get started with that. We have three topics on this live stream today. The first one is the hiring environment, so we can get started with that. And after every topic, you can ask questions from Merritt. So we try to take in 2 to 3 questions. So be sure to use this time. That's how you get maximum out of this live stream. I personally, I can't believe that hiring internationally in 2023 for some companies is a new thing in 2023. I've had a few agencies already coming in through CXL Talent, and they're making the first international hires. For me, that was kind of like a mind-blowing. Based on your experience on CXL or elsewhere, have you seen the labor market has changed over the past 2 years, and what do you think about the next 2 years, if you can make a prediction on it?
COVID obviously shook things up in a big way. It put everyone in a remote environment. It normalized remote work, whereas for a lot of companies it was kind of it was a novelty at best, and at worst it was sort of an enemy to productivity. So past 2 years, it's really become normal for a lot of companies. And my prediction would be that there's going to be a bit of a polarization here, and it's already showing up in a lot of companies. Some people are locking it down. We're saying like, remote work does not work for us. Either like it doesn't give us the environment that we want for our people to collaborate. And then other companies have seen tremendous benefit from going remote first, right? First being forced to go remote and realizing that you can actually operate as an organization this way, but then seeing a lot of the side benefits of like, holy crap, this opens up a labor market that is 100x bigger than I thought was available to me before. So my prediction would be that polarization is going to continue. Some companies are going to choose to go one way and like really lock it down and stay as on-site and as tight as possible, and others are going to realize those benefits.
What are the biggest benefits when tapping into the global talent pool that helps your company to grow despite all the headwinds which are going on in economy-wise?
The first is the size of the talent pool. You realize when going remote and when going global, that it's much bigger than you expected it to be. Cost is another major issue. And we've known about this from outsourcing for decades now, that like if you're willing to go offshore to some areas in geographical locations, the cost expectations of bringing on talent are much lower. So it could be the difference between bringing on 3 headcount globally or bringing on 1 headcount locally. And that's a big consideration, especially when you're considering scaling and things like that. But I've also found the cost over time tends to get bigger in the US. So if you're talking about someone with relatively early in their career, what I've found is that salary expectations, they grow really rapidly in the US. You get someone with after they're with you for a couple years experience, if they're early career especially, their expectations for more money go up quite a bit. And I have not witnessed the same thing with my international hires. There seems to be a much more tempoed growth expectation and frankly, greater loyalty from some of my international team members. I don't see the same type of like impatience with their career growth and trajectory that I do in the US. And that's not to say that like career growth isn't important to those folks or that I don't want to support their career growth. There just seems to be a little bit of a difference in attitude. I don't know, like I don't want to say like US employees are entitled, because I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think there's just some differences in sort of career expectations, and again, some of the loyalty just seems a little bit different there. So those are some of the really big benefits that I see. There's a lot of like smaller stuff that we could discuss.
Yeah, I could definitely say when you said attitude, of course, it depends. And personally, I've seen talent from Latin America, for example, whenever we were matching with some great agency, then the feedback we're getting from the talents and how grateful they are, this is also mind-blowing.
If you can pay even like a low US salary to some geographies, that's like that's like a pay scale that is like way higher than most other jobs that are available to them become. So it actually feels kind of good to like be able to compensate someone in a geography with lower cost of living that it's like a really big deal. They may be sort of on the entry level early career for your company, but they're getting paid at a level of a much more senior role. And those are hard opportunities for them to come by, and so they appreciate it more. And it kind of feels good on my end to be able to do that and still feel like it's like a good deal for me.
Yeah, definitely. There are some life-changing moments. We can all feel that. But I believe there are some benefits hiring local US talent as well, right? So how do you decide between hiring the US talent or abroad?
At this point, we're a pretty globally spread out company. At this point, it's more like functionally, do I need people who can collaborate locally? So we do a lot of some types of production work that happen in the US, and that's really the main consideration. I do think a little bit about how easy it will be to collaborate with other folks that are close to them on their team. And so I do look at time zones a bit, but mostly, we've really embraced a global workforce. And so I just assume that I'm probably going to be looking at candidates overseas as well as some in the US. And it's more at a candidate level who's more qualified and, the full package.
You probably have been in touch with other CEOs as well, not only your experience. Have you heard something from other CEOs, how they're finding the great talent abroad, and despite of all the challenges what we're facing today, high salary expectations, layoffs, economy situation, et cetera, et cetera?
I see some companies actually looking to open offices in other geos, right? Looking to go open an office in not London is probably not what I'm looking at, but I've seen like Costa Rica or some other countries where they're saying like we're going to build like a concentration, and we're actually going to like just replicate like the in-office environment that we have here, but just open an office abroad. I've also seen companies that will sort of specialize in particular geos instead of looking at like the whole world. Like we're only going to look at the Philippines, and we're going to get really good at recruiting within the Philippines and hire a recruiter out there, and then build up our certain types of roles in that area. And that's an interesting approach because it allows you to sort of like get a better feel for a different geography. But it still sort of limits you on the scope of like the talent pool that's really available to you out there, and at questionable advantage. The other thing that I see happening are, like I said, some companies just doubling down on in office and saying like, we're not going to do the remote thing as much. We're actually going to lock down and keep people on site and really try to control our culture and the way that we work together, and doubling down that way. And then unfortunately, I do see a lot of companies that are just sort of slow on the uptake of the remote workforce, and they've well, I should say they've adapted to sort of remote work expectations of people in today's day and age, but they haven't quite figured out how to hire abroad and how to go international with that remote workforce. And that's a little sadder to see because they just haven't realized the benefits, or they think it's going to be too hard, or that there's too many loopholes too many hoops to jump through to bring someone onto the team who is in another country.
So we have gone through the first topic, the hiring environment. I'm happy to take in any questions from the audience as well. So I can see that Dominic has left a comment for us, but let's see what's there.
We also have a programmer from Poland, Dominic. So yes, we have realized that there's some great talent. Why do people think it's so hard? Again, my admission prior to joining CXL was that I did think it was a lot harder than it is to hire remotely and internationally. There's this conception out there that it's like, there are big compliance hoops to jump through. There are unknowns of like what you actually have to do to get it done. And there's different approaches to doing that. You can do this on your own, right? Like there's a government form to fill out. If you're a U.S. based business, there's a W-8 form that remote people have to fill out if they're going to be a contractor. If they're going to be and that's maybe the first question, like contractor or full-time employee. If full-time employee, I really recommend you check out one of these employer of record companies. They make it super easy to basically, they have a presence in the country that you're looking to hire in. You don't even have to talk to someone. You can do this all it's all SaaS, right? Remote.com, DEEL.com. They make it really easy to like hire someone and provide benefits and, actually have like a solid employment relationship. If you're going to go the contractor route, then it's like filling out a W-8 form. That's a US IRS form, and establishing a contract with that individual. And there's some nuances of which direction you might want to go. It's obviously more expensive from like a relationship perspective to do the employer of record format than it is to just do a contract work. But both are possible. We tend to lean more heavily at CXL on the contractor positions. But both of those things are really easy. You can do them through the same company even.
Yeah, this is actually the same thing. It's really great to work remotely. Working together with CXL, a contractor, definitely gives really good freedom. Feels great for the team members as well. So yeah, definitely would say it's an amazing way to collaborate with. So there was actually a really good question from Philip as well. I even heard during the CXL live, someone asked, hey, CXL team itself is not so big, but how you guys have built a global team. Your people are all over the place because they just chatted a little bit here and there, and everybody said like, hey, I'm from Philippines, I'm from Spain, I'm from Peru, I'm from there, I'm from there. So Philip has questions that for smaller businesses, how big should you be before you start hiring remotely?
I don't think there's just one way to grow here. And I think the company, it may be different based on the company. And the reason I say that is because you really do, when you go global and remote, you give up some of the ability to tightly control the culture, right? Like you can't have the same type of influence over day-to-day interactions that you would have in an in-office environment. So I'm not saying there's no cost to doing this. I think it's less than you think. And the flip side of that is, we talk about how much we value diversity, right? But how much are you actually hiring diverse people? And when you look at a global workforce, that comes naturally. Like our company, the diversity of thought, the diversity of perspective that we have comes very naturally because we're looking across the world for our talent. So yeah, on the one hand, it is a little more work to get some of the same cohesiveness culturally from the team, but we do some things. We make some investments, right? Like there are certain rituals that we uphold in our meetings to try to build. There's certain types of engagements that we try to have. We use Slack as a collaboration tool, and so we try to spur some discussions and try to foster some culture there. We bring people together a couple times a year, all into one location to try to get some face time. So there are things you can do. As far as like size of the company, though, I think it maybe depends on how quickly you want to grow. The pool of talent that you have access to on a global scale is so much larger. And so like scaling quickly can be a whole lot easier if you look at that global pool of talent, and more affordable, right? So if your goal is to hire as many people as quickly as possible, I would look globally. If your goal is to really control that growth and do it, control the growth and control the culture, I would look local. Size of the business, I don't think has much to do with it because, again, affordability is a big thing here. Cultural cohesiveness is a big thing here.
What would you say to CEOs or agency owners? What do they need to know about hiring internationally? What are the most important things?
That is easy. There's nothing to be worried about or scared of here. It's not like if you're talking about like importing workers from India or something, like bring them into the US, like then you're talking about visas and all this stuff. But like as far as just hiring someone in another country, you can go to remote.com today and in 10 minutes have a locally compliant contract and set up with a payment system to pay them even and to do the invoicing for like $30 a month. I mean, it's ridiculously cheap. And if you want to save that $30 a month, like have your own payment system, go through Wise or go through your bank or PayPal or whatever, and go have a lawyer that like will whip up a contract for you that works in those countries. But it really is pretty simple and easy to do this stuff, like from an operational executing through the remote hiring, and it's totally worth it. Like we get great talent from abroad. Like you may have concerns about language, I guess, but you can do English language competency tests. We do it for all our people that are in our talent program. Like we make sure that before we take them out to other people, we make sure they can communicate effectively. And a lot of the communication happens over like even language. I mean, there are tools out there when most of your communication is happening over texts like Slack and otherwise. Grammarly like integrates into just about everything and helps people keep their language sharp anyways. So I don't know.
We have so far talked about the sweet stuff, things which are working. So what isn't working when it comes to hiring remote talent, or what kind of roadblocks you have personally experienced?
Well, we talked about like having a really tight control on the culture of an organization. I mean, there are ways that help with that. I mean, I think there's a confluence of a lot of things here that come with the challenges of being spread out across different geographies and different time zones. Lots of things to deal with there. Okay, so let's talk about culture for a second. Again, it's almost all of these are like a two-edged sword, right? There's positives and there's negatives, and you just got to decide what you want to go after. So on the cultural side, there are different cultural dimensions that you have to work through, and people need to have an awareness of those dimensions, whether that is how we think about time, and whether when we say, yeah, I'm going to do something, that means I'm going to do it tomorrow, or if it means I'm going to do it next year. There are cultural differences in that. Individualistic versus collectivistic achievement orientations, deference to authority and hierarchy, the direct versus indirect communication styles. These are they're things that you have to be aware, develop an awareness for and appreciation for, but they can also be really good strengths for your organization. They can help you develop resiliency. They can help you actually have clearer communication over time because you get better at it because you kind of deal with those things. Same thing with working on different time zones. There's on the one hand, you have the concept of like, my business is always running. There's always some progress being made. I can put in a request at the end of my day. And like, by the time I clock in the next morning, a lot of work has already been done towards that thing. So that's like a really good thing about having people in different time zones. On the other hand, like if you have a question towards your end of the day, like you may have to wait to get that question answered until the next day. So there's trade-offs. I mentioned at the beginning, one thing we did last year was institute some common hours. So it's not a lot. We just have 2 hours in our organization that are like common for everybody, that we're asking everybody to be online, be available to answer questions. But those are challenges that you have to navigate. Another thing that can be a challenge is like really nailing the asynchronous or text communication that you have with people. It takes some work, right? Like imagine doing all your communication with your spouse, for example, your significant other, via text message. Like text messages do not handle emotion well. Mistakes can be made if people are communicating in their second language. English is their second language, for example. It's not always the most skillful and graceful communication. And so you have to work really hard to adapt to that and make sure that's not a stumbling block and that's not like tripping you up from a cultural perspective. And there are things that we can do. I mean, from like daily stand-up meetings that you can have to making sure people are aware of like, hey, there's a line that we don't cross with these asynchronous communications. And if you think you're skirting near that line, you flag it, and then you say, let's take this to a meeting instead. I think another thing that people are just scared of with remote work generally is like it requires a higher degree of trust in people, confidence that they're putting in a full day's work of effort, and that they're not getting some other job on the side or doing something else on the side. And I think that is true whether you're doing remote work just in the US locally or doing it abroad. I mean, it's the same type of challenge you have when you get rid of the office in any way, shape, or form. And honestly, it hasn't been a big problem for that. I mean, as long as you're managing to outcomes and to delivery, and then what does it matter what hours people work? What does it matter, how they're doing the work? You just want the job to get done. It's very much like, the contract worker orientation of like, I'm hiring you to do something to get some results, to own some outputs, and I'm focusing on that. And like beyond that, I don't really care.
We can actually touch the last topic, the managing the international team as well a little bit, and then go into the questions only for the last part of the live stream. Can you bring out some of the details as well? What processes, strategies, or tools you're using to help everyone to be aligned or focused? Some maybe even practical advice or insights. What could help others to manage the global team?
Yeah, I mean, one of those, I see the question over here about pay equity. It is a little more overhead to sort of look at pay structures across different geos. And when you post a job, like if it's a job for all of Europe, even across Europe, there's different pay expectations in different areas. And it's a bit of a dance with like, what are the expectations of the individual that you're hiring, and like, what's the pay range for the job? And then like, how does that equate to cost of living? We're accustomed to operating in that environment, both from like a delivery product perspective. Like we have parity pricing that we offer to people for our subscription content. It helps us orient towards being more sensitive to that stuff. We also use technology. We started using a service called Figures, which very easily helps you look at pay differences across different geographies. And so you can like search based on other similar job roles and see what the pay expectations may be for those roles in different countries. To Carlos's point, it's really not about saving money on taxes, like the way you structure these things. You are sort of shifting, in some cases, the onus of handling those taxes and compliance and stuff to the contractor that you're hiring. Personally, we work hard to make sure that it's a good deal. We probably do less local adjustment than we could in terms of the pay. But you could certainly go a long ways to making sure everything is like equitable within the country. Some people, Renee, like yourself, I know, are like digital nomads. And so they're looking for like a pay that's not really attached to the geo that they live in. But even then, I mean, you can generally look at like the cost differences for hiring people. Like in big US cities, it's really high. I haven't seen any place abroad that matches the cost for hiring someone in San Francisco or in New York City, for example. So you can almost guarantee that like it's going to be lower than those almost anywhere else you look, but it is going to vary quite a bit, and it may be different per the individual. The individual may say like, hey, I may be in Bali, for example, but my pay expectations are higher, and like you just have to have that conversation with people. And we do, like, one of the first questions we ask people when we look at hiring internationally is like, what are your pay expectations? And we do allow them to sort of start the conversation in that way.
Yeah. And there are actually some talent already. It doesn't matter anymore so much if they're living in Brazil. Sometimes some senior talent, they're easily asking for $150,000 per year, for example. So this can also happen depending on the talent experience and skills. What are the 3-5 key factors you have in mind when you're filtering the CVs for remote candidates? Since there are so many talents applying globally, right? Especially when you brought out the global talent pools and really big.
When filtering down the CVs, I mean, we're looking to make sure those check boxes against the details of the job for sure. So, I mean, that's factor number one always. I'm going to say it goes beyond the CVs. So there's some, yeah, we do get a lot of CVs come in, but we also have like our HR person sort of take the first pass at filtering out a bunch of the noise. We do task-based tests for some people. In some cases, we actually do those up front. So we may have like a couple tools we use. Predictive Index, for one, helps us do behaviors-based filtering and also cognitive assessment on individuals. It's not necessary for every job, but there's some research out there that like there's a certain level of cognitive performance that you want people to get beyond. So that could be one way if you can automate that in and use that as like a filtering device. Task-based assessments also help us quite a bit when doing things. Certain roles that we know require much more language proficiency, we'll do other tasks that are more like pass fail in that regard. And then as you start to climb up the ladder of like this person passes like basic requirements, then we start to look at other factors. For us personally at CXL, social presence is one of those things that we will look at. But none of those are like really, like, aside from like taking the first pass at the CVs and saying like, oh, clearly this person is not qualified, does not have the experience. It becomes more laborsome the more you get into it. But look, if I've got too many people applying to my jobs, that's a great problem to have. So if that is your problem, maybe like don't hesitate to like up the bar a little bit and ask for more years of experience, for example, or get picky about geos that you want to see. I don't know.
I see there are some of the tool questions, but this already got answered by Pablo. So that was the salary benchmarking tool, what you mentioned, right? The figures, yep. HR. Yeah, cool. Okay, if we're actually about to end this live stream soon. We're over time already a few minutes. Merritt, you want to say some last words or some of the things what you think could be beneficial for US agencies, companies who are still, looking to make their first hires or becoming more confident in making the remote hires?
There's a couple things that like should weigh pretty heavy. One is like it's a very competitive environment for good talent. And one of the things that you need to look at through your process, well, I mean, a couple of things. One, you want to assess, like, talent can be very expensive to make the wrong decision, right? So you want some validation that like the talent actually does have the right skills. It can be a lengthy process. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we've seen there's a market to help people bring talent in with our talent program. That's one of the things that we provide. But even on the other side of that, like for us, like when we're looking at bringing new talent, we look at optimizing that process, and like we don't want to lose good opportunities at talent. So we try to shorten, for example, the interview process as much as possible. We try to bring in those task-based assessments that are going to give us some better information about making the decision. We try to stack interviews into one day, and really, like, from the time that we see someone that we really like to the time we make an offer, we want to get that process down to be as short as possible. We don't want people walking away from us that we think are very high promise and can get the job done. So we think a lot about speed, and I would encourage people to think about that as well. That's another argument for broadening the talent pool. I've seen way too many positions, especially in a space that I'm really familiar with, which is in conversion rate optimization, experimentation and analytics. I've seen lots of positions stand open for 6, 12 months. I mean, it's ridiculous how long it takes people to hire. And that really does not need to be the case if you broaden your talent pool. It's really about like shortening that process, getting people in the door as quickly as possible, and good people, qualified people in the door as quickly as possible. And I think that's easier to do with a global workforce.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I can see another question as well. I think this is related to CXL talent, or it can be also in general in CXL. But yeah, when someone gets trained by CXL, do they get real experience, like ad spend or BBC specialist, From when people take the CXL courses, of course, we do encourage all of them to take on practical tasks as well at the same time while they're learning, because this is the best way to actually master what you're learning. Otherwise, if you just go through the courses, you can forget 80% of the information easily, right? So it doesn't help you that much. But this is a responsibility for people and students who are taking the courses. Okay, now another question. How does the CXL measure how good they are before sending them out to potential companies? We're doing a bunch of tests qualifying in a qualification process. We're running through the CXL exams, cognitive behavioral assessments, and also we're doing a practical project test. And based on all of that, we get the really good information about this person, how well this person is suited for different career paths, how well they're solving the problems, and they're able to show out their strengths and skills at the same time. So this has been really helpful in making the quick hires. And we don't also look so much resumes and same with our clients. Of course, it's good to see what kind of experience people have. So you want to take next further with this talent, right? So if you have a blank resume or LinkedIn profile is really empty and it doesn't show or tell anything, then it's really hard to go further with that talent. Thanks so much, Merritt, for joining us today, taking your time, precious time to join the live stream, share amazing insights with people. I believe many US companies, agencies got some decent information from you. And of course, I guess they're welcome to reach out to you over LinkedIn. Connect on LinkedIn. Yeah. And I use some interesting approaches to get a connection on LinkedIn. And thanks so much for everybody else as well for joining the live stream. Be sure to check it out, the CXL Talent Program. There's a link below this live stream, link in the comments, especially if you're interested in building a global team and really making this process 100% risk-free. Then definitely we're here to help you out with this one. And that's pretty much it, guys. And have a great Tuesday and enjoy your week.